You were taught that governments control money, but what if that belief is carefully scripted illusion? What if global debt is not a mistake, but a quiet system of invisible command? What if your taxes, savings, and future are shaped by forces you never see? Tonight, we uncover the architects behind the silent machinery of global financial dominance. This is not a conspiracy fantasy. This is a documented trail of power and interest. A story where debt is not weakness, but the most sophisticated weapon ever designed. And the most disturbing part is how ordinary it has been made to feel. So ask yourself calmly, who truly benefits when nations borrow endlessly? The answer has been delayed for decades, hidden behind complex economic language. But every system leaves a pattern, and every pattern tells a truth. To understand this silent power, we must return to the origins of modern debt. Long before digital banking, kings borrowed gold to fund wars and expand influence. Private lenders discovered something dangerous. Rulers always repaid through public suffering. This partnership of crown and creditor became the embryo of modern financial control. When central banks emerged, money stopped being metal and became controlled promises. The Bank of England pioneered a model where private capital shaped national economies. Governments no longer created money freely, they borrowed it with interest attached. This shift quietly transferred power from elected leaders to financial institutions. Debt became predictable profit, and crisis became opportunity for further control. The system had been born, but its true rise was yet to come. The 20th century accelerated this model under the pressure of global conflicts. World wars forced nations into unprecedented borrowing without realistic repayment plans. International institutions like the IMF and World Bank emerged as global lenders. Their mission appeared noble, but their structure favored creditor nations and banks. Structural adjustment programs rewrote economies under the banner of stabilization and growth. Countries were told to privatize, deregulate, and open markets for foreign capital. Debt was framed as development, but influence was the unspoken currency exchanged. Behind closed doors, conditions shaped policies, budgets, and national priorities. Economic sovereignty began dissolving into spreadsheets controlled from distant boardrooms. Silent power was not announced. It was simply normalized through procedure. As globalization expanded, so did the complexity of debt and its invisible architects. Derivatives, bonds, and speculative instruments multiplied beyond physical economic realities. Financial giants grew so large, they influenced governments, regulations, and global markets. These institutions were declared too big to fail, but never too powerful to question. Central banks coordinated strategies, but relied heavily on private financial expertise. Interest rates became levers, subtly steering inflation, growth, and public sentiment. Every economic shock became a moment to reassert silent structural authority. The system thrived on dependence, not independence or sustainable self-control. Debt was no longer emergency relief, it became permanent structural architecture, and with it, power concentrated into fewer and fewer unseen hands. Then came the breaking point, the crises that exposed the system's inner contradictions. The 2008 financial collapse revealed how fragile and manipulated markets truly were. Ordinary citizens lost homes, jobs, and security, while banks received historic bailouts. Public money saved private institutions that engineered their own reckless collapse. Governments absorbed toxic debt to prevent systemic implosion and widespread panic. The narrative blamed consumers, not the architects of financial speculation. Responsibility was diffused, accountability vanished into legal complexity and silence. Trust in the system weakened, but dependency on it deepened dramatically. Even in collapse, the same structures emerged stronger and more influential. Crisis had not ended power, it had refined and reinforced it. The fallout created a world addicted to stimulus and emergency monetary intervention. Quantitative easing injected trillions into markets under the promise of stability. Asset prices soared, while real wages stagnated or declined significantly. Inequality widened as financial assets benefited elites disproportionately. Debt levels reached historic highs without sustainable growth fundamentals. Governments normalized borrowing as everyday policy rather than emergency response. This prolonged dependence reshaped political decisions and development strategies. Nations functioned less as sovereign entities and more as managed debt portfolios. The illusion of choice masked the reality of financial obligation pressure. Silent power had now woven itself into everyday economic routine. Failed fixes followed, each claiming reform while preserving core power structures. Regulations were introduced, but loopholes ensured financial dominance remained intact. Transparency laws existed, yet real decisions occurred beyond public oversight. Committees replaced accountability, and bureaucracy diluted responsibility further. Promises of ethical banking met resistance from profit-driven stakeholders. Reform became cosmetic adjustment rather than structural transformation effort. Public outrage faded into passive acceptance and distracted consumer culture. The engine of debt continued humming beneath calm economic headlines. Every attempt at change was absorbed and neutralized by system design. The fix always protected power, never permanently redistributed it. Today, modern parallels reveal a repetition of historic financial manipulation patterns. Global debt has surpassed $300 trillion and continues accelerating rapidly. Developing nations allocate massive budgets solely to debt interest payments. Monetary policies influence elections, markets, and everyday cost of living. Digital currencies and fintech promise liberation, but centralize data oversight capabilities. Economic shocks become predictable cycles rather than unexpected anomalies. The same actors benefit while the public bears structural adjustment consequences. History echoes, not as drama, but as policy repetition under new terminology. Silent power thrives through complexity, not force or visible domination, and complexity is always defended as necessary economic sophistication. So, who really controls global debt and this invisible flow of influence? A network of central banks, private financial institutions, and elite policy shapers. Not governments alone, but interconnected systems above electoral accountability. Power that exists in cycle, obligation, and perpetual financial dependency design. It is silent because silence ensures compliance without public resistance. It is powerful because it defines the rules nations must obey. And it endures because clarity has been strategically delayed. Understanding this is not rebellion, it is intellectual self-defense. Awareness disrupts the comfort of ignorance, but reveals essential systemic truth. And truth is always the first step toward meaningful structural change. Takeaway 1, debt is not just economic, it is political and strategic control. Takeaway 2, crises are often designed or exploited for power recalibration. Takeaway 3, transparency is the greatest threat to silent authority. The warning remains. A system unchecked always evolves into widespread exploitation. The question persists. Will societies demand clarity or continue inherited obedience? Silent power grows strongest when scrutiny disappears and curiosity sleeps. The future depends on informed citizens challenging normalized financial narratives. Knowledge is not dangerous. Ignorance is strategically profitable for unseen elites. Stay critical, stay curious, and never accept complexity without explanation. If you seek truth beyond headlines, subscribe, reflect, and continue questioning reality.